Is underway after the home of a South Carolina judge went up in flames over the weekend. Take a look. It happened in Edisto Beach, about an hour south of Charleston. The home is owned by Judge Diane Goodstein, who serves as the state circuit court. Officials say 3 people were injured in the fire, including Goodstein's husband, former Democratic State Senator Arnold Goodstein. Judge Goodstein made news last month after issuing a ruling blocking South Carolina from handing over millions of voters' personal data to the Department of Justice.
Breaking news about Judge Goodstein in South Carolina. Her house went up, almost completely destroyed from, quote, an apparent explosion, unquote. And this is the same judge that in September denied the Trump administration through the DOJ to have access to the state's voting information. That ruling was later overturned by the Supreme Court, but Goodstein, like many, was targeted as a Trump enemy, a liberal judge. Russian intelligence have an axiom that is very instructive of what's happening in American politics. This story is an example. No person, no problem. Meaning, get rid of the person who represents the problem, whose ideas or actions are the problem, and you get rid of them. And then, is that what happened to Judge Goodstein? I don't know. She wasn't even home at the time. She was out walking her dogs, reportedly. And she is all right, although several other people were injured by the fire, whatever we figure out the cause to be, and they'll figure it out. Arson investigation, the inception of fires, very good investigating skills. And
boy. So we got to talk about a BluAnon far left conspiracy theory getting debunked once again because these people just shamelessly lied, right? If a leftist mouth is moving, then they're probably lying, right? I mean, I think that's almost certain at this point. I think it's about 100% of the time because, again, we have another far left claim that we got to debunk because these people have jumped the gun once again, trying to blame Trump and MAGA for what happened to liberal woke Judge Diane Goldstein's home in South Carolina, okay? And BluAnon has concocted this conspiracy theory that because this judge made a ruling that the Trump administration didn't like or Republicans didn't like, that is why she was targeted, right? Her home, again, was burned down by a Trump MAGA person, right? Extremist, okay? A terrorist, okay? This is the narrative that the left was putting out there, including MSNBC, who picked up on this far left conspiracy theory and aired it on their network. Take a look.
At the same time, the right is trying to pretend like there is this epidemic of left-wing terrorism in the country. In a 2-week time period, we've had 3 MAGA attacks. So you're probably thinking, well, what's the third? Breaking. Liberal South Carolina judge Diane Goodstein's home is burning to the ground after an explosion. SLED is investigating as arson and refer attack as Judge Goodstein has been receiving multiple threats. Her husband, a former state senator, is in the hospital. So this judge was targeted by Trump, by MAGA, because she made a decision that they didn't like. She was blocking all of the voter data from South Carolina from being turned over to the DOJ. She said, we're blocking that because no good is going to come from the feds getting all the state voting data. Because as you all know, they do ballot spoiling, ballot purging. They try to basically rig the numbers as much as they can to try to bias it in favor of Republicans. And so she just blocked them from getting any of the data, protecting the right to vote, protecting one person, one vote. Well, because of that, she became public enemy number 1 to MAGA. And this is the result. Look.
You can hear this thing burning.
Some of the families in the hospital now. A few weeks ago, one of Trump's top DOJ officials publicly targeted this judge. Today, the judge's home is on fire. So, Harmeet Dillon, this Justice Department civil rights will not stand for a state court judge's hasty nullification of our federal voting laws. I will allow nothing to stand in the way of our mandate to maintain clean voter rolls. One citizen, one vote.
When we come back, what we're learning about the fire that destroyed the home of a South Carolina circuit court judge who faced criticism from Trump officials after a ruling she made against the Trump administration. It comes amid a surge in hostility and threats against judges, as well as criticism directly from the Trump administration, including for Judge Goodstein, after she temporarily blocked the Justice Department from accessing the files of millions of registered voters in South Carolina. Mary McCord is still with us. Mary, what questions do you have based on what we're hearing so far?
You know, this is the kind, again, we've talked today already about crossing Rubicons, right? And when you're starting to attack judges because of their rulings, we're in a very, very dangerous position in this country. And it makes judges fearful. It makes prosecutors fearful, as we know. It makes others in positions where they could be criticized by Donald Trump fearful. And he needs to know the power of his voice and how people respond to that. We've been saying this for years, Nicole, but like, if this is what this turns out to be, some sort of politically motivated act of domestic terrorism, then, you know, the importance and significance of the things that Donald Trump says about a person just, again, will be demonstrated in this instance.
Yeah, so again, extremely fascinating and extremely frustrating at the same time, because leftists just lie so shamelessly, right? And what's funny is that they pretend that they're not the ones that are engaging in these shameless lies, right? In this situation right here, we have a fire, okay, that happened at a judge's home. Now, instead of waiting until the facts and evidence come out that, you know, the investigation takes place, what they do is that they already declare this to be a MAGA/Trump attack. Even though, again, we don't know. There are a number of reasons why a home could catch fire, right? There could be an explosion. There's a number of reasons why something like that could happen that has nothing to do with a deliberate attack. But let's say it was a deliberate attack on a judge. It also doesn't mean that the attack was politically motivated or that it was done by MAGA, right? Or it happened because of Trump, okay? You know, there needs to be an investigation, okay, first. Okay, we need to get a suspect first. There's a whole lot of, you know, holes to be filled here before we start jumping to conclusions. But again, it didn't stop Kyle Kukalinski from once again, right, declaring this guy is MAGA, just like he did with Charlie Kirk's assassin, which, by the way, they're showing much more concern for this judge and her family, who escaped alive, right? They're showing much more concern for them than they showed for Charlie Kirk, who actually was assassinated, shot, and killed, right? It's funny how that works. Now, all of a sudden, they're concerned about the rhetoric and what the rhetoric is leading to in this country, but they weren't concerned about that when it came to Charlie Kirk, right? They tried to lie to us and tell us that, no, he was killed by one of his own, right? He was killed by a right-winger. Okay, so they wouldn't lie about this situation involving this judge, would they? Right? Would they lie about that? Of course they lie about it, because these people shamelessly lie. And the worst part about the lies is that it basically shows that they don't give a damn about their audience. They don't give a damn about the consequences of their rhetoric, because when you have a platform, whether it be MSNBC or YouTube, I think that as a content creator, you should at least, especially when you're talking about the news and politics, right? You know, subjects that can get very heated, okay, that are inherently divisive, right? You have a responsibility to, at the very least, try to present factual information on your platform, to make a good faith attempt to do that, okay? To act with some integrity. I can't say that happens on Kyle Kukalinski's channel, right? And it's just fascinating because there's so many lies that I'm thinking about making a playlist of just all of the lies that this guy tells on his platform. And here's the thing. It's not like, you know, these are fuzzy lies, right? Like, these are, you know, it's a gray area. It's more of a matter of opinion. Like, no. Like, we're talking about just flat out lies. Like, knowing the difference between Chicago and Portland. Right? Like, basic, like, factual errors, right? That you should make these mistakes, especially when you've been doing this for a long time. You got 2 million subs. Oh, well, Charlie Kirk's assassin was MAGA, right? This is a MAGA guy. The would-be assassin of the ICE agent, he was far right. Far right, he was a MAGA guy too, right? This is what he said on his platform. Now, right? He's claiming, well, see, the arson, right? This guy who burned down his house, he knows this for sure. He's MAGA, he's Trump. And this is a result of their rhetoric, right? Their rhetoric gets this judge, right? And everybody is shamelessly lying except him, right? So without further ado, let's find out if Kyle Kulinski is right this time.
As authorities investigate the cause of an explosion and subsequent fire at a home belonging to South Carolina Circuit Court Judge Diane Goodstein and former state senator Arnold Goodstein, some Democrats suspect that the Trump administration officials who have been saying all sorts of terrible things about this judge might have something to do with inspiring an attack against the home. Now, let me be absolutely clear. This investigation is ongoing, and so far, authorities have said that there is no evidence to suggest that there's been foul play or arson. However, they are still investigating it. Nonetheless.
Nonetheless, there you have it, right? Kind of anticlimactic, right? Authorities have found we don't have any evidence of arson. AKA, we don't have any evidence that any human did this, right? That some politically motivated individual set this judge's house on fire. We don't have evidence of that. They also don't have any evidence of a pre-fire explosion, okay? Which would mean a device, right? Or something went off before the fire, right? Some type of bomb or something like that. So they don't have any evidence, at least in the preliminary findings, that any human was involved in this, right? That foul play was involved. Now, in my opinion, I think it is likely that they're not going to find that there was any foul play, because it's not hard for me to believe that, you know, you have random house explosions that happen sometime, right? And this judge lived in a house and it happened. Okay, I mean, I can only go with evidence, but the left is going to say, see, no, you can't listen to the Trump administration. They're trying to cover up for some MAGA guy doing this, right? That's what they're going to say. I already know what it's going to be. We're living in a world where it doesn't matter the facts, the evidence, or the lack of evidence, right? Or proof or anything like that. The left, they're going to confirm their own reality, right? Just like with the Trey Reed case. The facts and evidence, the forensic findings suggest that, hey, this guy, he killed himself. He hung himself. The left's response, no way. Black men don't hang themselves, right? As if a black man has never hung himself in history. Like a black man has never done that before, ever. I think, again, when you talk about that subject, there's a surprising number of people, especially men, who do choose to hang themselves if they go that route, unfortunately, right? It happens, okay? So to me, it is totally plausible, right? And probable, especially considering the investigation by the black police, the black coroner, okay? Everybody involved black, but the woke revolutionaries can't accept that. They've been convinced that no. You don't understand. This was white supremacy, right? This was a white mob, okay? And they convinced themselves that that's what happened, and there's no amount of facts or evidence that can convince them otherwise, right? So again, my gut feeling is that Kyle Kulinski is not only going to ignore what the police said, but he's going to use that as evidence that, no, see, this guy is definitely MAGA, right? It was definitely a MAGA person because the police are covering it up, right? That's how leftist logic works. You don't have to be right. You don't have to bring the facts. You don't have to bring the evidence. You don't have to be honest, right? As long as you tell these people what they want to hear, right? What they want reality to be, it's fine, right? It's totally fine. Who cares? Who cares about integrity? Right? Who cares about waiting? Like doing something as basic as just waiting and saying, you know what? I'm going to wait before I turn around and start blaming people for an attack, right? I'm going to wait for some facts, some evidence, okay, before I start to point fingers. Like what happened with the recent shooting at the church, the Mormon church, right? I didn't come out here and say that guy was a Democrat or a far leftist, even though I had good reason to believe initially that the guy could have been a Democrat or a far leftist. But I didn't come out here and start to immediately accuse him of being a far leftist. I said, no, we should wait and see. We should wait and see. Also, the motive of that shooting had nothing to do with politics. So his political leanings, regardless of whether he's a Democrat or a Republican, it doesn't really matter, right? Doesn't really matter at all because that wasn't a politically motivated shooting. So in a situation like this, where it appears that it can be a politically motivated attack on a judge, again, basic integrity, you should wait and see, right? Wait and see, have at least something to back up a claim before coming out here and blaming one side or the other, right? Because, you know, I could have came out here and said, well, see, no, you don't understand. this judge isn't woke enough, right? This judge isn't woke enough. So therefore, this must have been a far leftist. I said nothing. I waited until we got the facts and evidence. And now I'm coming out here saying, well, the preliminary findings are showing that there is nobody to blame, that this was not a politically motivated attack at all. It was a random explosion, which happens, right? It happens.
Some of these accusations have led to Stephen Miller melting down, so stay tuned for that. Now, this investigation, again, is ongoing as we speak. Is there a possibility of arson? So far, authorities say they haven't seen any evidence of that, but we're going to wait until the investigation is finished. Now, prior to the fire, Judge Goodstein had been receiving hundreds of serious threats, including death threats. Before I give you the details on that, any thoughts, Cenk?
I'm worried about it. So when there's a giant fire in the house of someone who's been receiving death threats, you could tell me that you don't have the evidence yet, and I believe you, and maybe it was a coincidence. But my antennas are going to be up for not a coincidence. So I'm super worried about it.
I really don't understand why. Because again, it's not like there are a ton of MAGA motivated. I'm talking about like actual political acts of violence, okay, that are happening in this country from the right. There's just not that much of it. Leftists will try to make it seem like it's happening a lot, but it's not. I haven't seen it, because if this was happening as much as these people claim, right? These right-wing, far-right attacks, why is the media not covering it? Why is MSNBC not covering it every day? They should have a story every day, right, about some right-wing extremist if it was happening as much as these people claim, but it's not. That tells you that it's not happening, because the demand for it is certainly there. We know the demand for it is there because you had leftists and MSNBC jump to conclusions, right? Go blaming Trump, blaming the Trump administration. See, it's their fault that this judge's house exploded, when there was no evidence of that whatsoever. No evidence. They didn't need evidence, because that's how desperate they are. But the supply, right? The supply is so little that they jumped on this immediately, right? Because they really, after the assassination of Charlie Kirk, they really want to come out here and have some far right MAGA guy to point the finger to, right? And say, see, no, you don't understand. It's actually MAGA. They're committing the acts of political violence. They're who you should be worried about. Because right now, everybody's looking at them, especially, again, after what happened to Charlie Kirk, and the fact that these people celebrated it. People are saying, you're kind of sick, right? You people are sick. You're sick people. So again, you know, they want to find the MAGA terrorists, right? That's what they want to find. They want to find that desperately, because they want to use that in order to distract from the political violence that we're seeing in this country coming exclusively from the left.
So there's been a lot made about how, especially after the assassination of Charlie Kirk, all of this rhetoric, all of this vitriol needs to be toned down. What's interesting is that commentary is directed to some on the left. And I agree with it. We need to be very precise and careful with our words. That doesn't mean that we should stop criticizing or critiquing politicians. At the same time, there hasn't really been much said about the violent rhetoric coming from the right.
Yeah, because again, there's not much violent rhetoric coming from the right, first and foremost, okay? But most importantly, as right-wingers, we don't act on it. You don't see us acting on it. And the reason why we don't act on it is because we're civilized and we don't believe in political violence, right? In order to get our way, which again, is not something I can say about the left. The left actually believes in political violence to get their way, okay? They also self-reportedly have higher rates of mental illness, right? They self-report as being mental ill much more than conservatives do. So yeah, I think when you combine those two things, that explains why we're seeing a lot of this stuff coming from radicalized leftists, right? It makes perfect sense to me. So again, this is not a both sides thing. These people keep trying to both sides it, but they don't understand. There is no both sides. There is no both sides. The most costly and violent political movement that we've ever seen in this country came during the 2020 pandemic at the hands of Black Lives Matter and Antifa. There's not one political movement in this country that's been more violent than a leftist, Democrat-supported movement. So don't sit here and try to tell me that it's a both sides issue when, again, the most violent protest that we've ever seen in this country's history came during the BLM riots. You can look that up. Look at the amount of damage, insurance costs to the country from the BLM riots. Like, it's not close. There's no equivalent of that you can point to coming from the right. Okay, you can't point anything that the right has done that is worse than what happened during the BLM riots. You can't.
So that's really at the heart of this story and what has led to Stephen Miller melting down. So hop on in. We're going to take a little bit of a ride, and I'm going to walk you through what's been going on. So according to local law enforcement, the fire appeared to have been caused by an explosion. Now, Judge Goodstein was luckily not in the home at the time of this explosion and fire.
Again, more evidence that this was not some MAGA attack, right? Because again, if somebody's going to attack somebody's home, right? If they're targeting individuals, families, or whatever, you would think that the individual would do it while the target is actually at home, right? If they wanted to take this judge out, right? Which again, that is the theory here from BluAnon. So again, if this person was planning this attack, why didn't they do it when the judge was home? Why do it when the judge is not home, right? Doesn't really make sense. So again, more evidence to support that this was some random explosion.
Apparently out walking her dog, but multiple members of her family, unfortunately, were inside the home, including at least 3 who have been hospitalized with injuries sustained during the fire. So according to South Carolina Chief Justice John Kittredge, Judge Goldstein was walking on the beach when the fire started. Her husband, Arnold as he goes by as well, was in the house with children and perhaps grandchildren. The family had to escape by jumping from a window or balcony. By the way, when the rescue efforts were taking place, the rescuers needed to use kayaks in order to get to the home and rescue the individuals inside. And that's because the home is like on the water and it's hard to get to. Quote, I'm told there were injuries from the fall, such as broken legs. Arnie's injuries may have been the most serious, for he was airlifted to the hospital. So Arnie, again, the husband of the judge, is reported to have multiple broken bones in his hips, legs, and feet due to the fall. The other family member who was reportedly hospitalized with serious injuries was his son, Arnold Goodstein II. Now, let's talk a little bit about why some are suspecting that this could have been the product of foul play, possibly arson. Again, I'm going to repeat again, there's no evidence of that yet. And there may never be any evidence of that. However,
yeah, but it sounds like leftists are wishing for there to be evidence, right? They're wishing that that's what happened, right? Because again, they want to desperately point the finger back at MAGA and say, hey, see, political violence happens from you guys too, right? You guys do it too, right? That's what they're trying to do. And again, this is just desperation. If there was evidence of foul play, they would probably not come out here and say what they're saying right now. Okay, let's be real. If there was any evidence, if there was anything to lead them to believe that there was some foul play here, they probably would not have put out this statement. I'm just saying.
The DOJ had apparently sought the information, including names, addresses, driver's license numbers, and social security numbers of over 3 million registered voters as part of President Donald Trump's March executive order restricting non-citizens from registering to vote, which, again, there's no evidence that that's something that's taking place anyway. But the judge stepped.
Yeah, there is. There was actually, again, one of the biggest stories in the country that an illegal immigrant, illegal immigrant registered to vote as a Democrat in Maryland, right? Apparently that's a story that Anna Kasparian is not aware of. But then again, considering how the leftist media ignored that story, right? Because it didn't fit the narrative. Am I surprised? Not really. You guys get the gist of what happened. Likely, this was not an attack. This was a random explosion. It happened. But the good thing is that the family is safe and sound, right? They survived. And I'm happy about that, right? I'm happy. I'm not celebrating it, right? Even if it turns out to be some type of MAGA attack, I wouldn't celebrate it. I wouldn't come out here and try to justify it. I wouldn't, do anything like that. I wouldn't do anything close to what you saw leftists do after the assassination of Charlie Kirk. I would not do anything like that, right? Because again, I have, basic decency, right? Morals as a human being. And also because I have basic integrity, I'm not going to jump to a conclusion about who is responsible for something or what appears to be an attack before you can confirm that, one, it was actually an attack, and two, that it was politically motivated. However, you have some people, leftists, have decided that, you know what, screw the facts, screw journalistic integrity. We're going to just blame every political attack on MAGA, right? We're going to blame MAGA every single time, and we're never going to acknowledge the truth when it comes to where a vast majority of the political violence in this country is coming from. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.